So now the house has talked to you and you want to write an offer and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to write the offer. And then it sinks in. Oh my goodness, it's time to write the offer. I'm scared to death. That's normal and that's okay. I'm going to walk you through the video explaining some contingencies and earnest money and how it protects you just in case the house ends up not being the one for you. Okay, so at this point, you're already pre approved and ready to go and write your offer. So here's some things that you need to think about. What do you want to offer? When do you want to close? What items in the house do you want to ask for? And I mean like appliances. And they'll list out what is staying, but let's say they don't have the fridge listed and you want to ask for that. We can put that into the contract. Are there any other terms that are important to you? That's the things you want to think about as you make your offer. Then we're going to look at the neighborhood. We're going to see what is active under contract and specifically what is sold in the neighborhood because we want to make sure that the list price is realistic. When you make your offer, there's a few things that can happen. One, the seller accepts your offer. And sometimes they'll accept it the very first offer. It just depends on what your terms are. Second, they can counter. That happens frequently. And third, they can not respond, not counter, do nothing, and just ignore us. That doesn't happen very often, but it usually happens if the buyer comes in with a really, really low offer and the seller's like, nah, I'm not having any of it. Some other things that we can do to try to make your offer more appealing is I can talk to the listing agent and I can ask them, hey, what's important to your seller? Because sometimes it's not always about the price. Sometimes they may need more time to close. Maybe they need a few days after closing to get moved out. Maybe they need a shorter closing. So if we can meet some of their terms, then you can come in sometimes a little bit lower depending on the market and make a lower offer, but agree to give them a few days after closing to move out, and they may take something lower, and that benefits you. Now, it also depends on what kind of market we're in. A seller's market is going to be one where it's in favor of the seller. They're getting their prices, they're getting their terms. Maybe there's multiple offer situations. So when you're offering in that situation, you usually want to go ahead and make your best offer first because you don't want another offer coming in and beating you out if possible. But make your best offer first in the seller's market. Sometimes they'll call for highest and best. And highest and best is when they go to every single offer that's come in and said, hey, buyer, we have a multiple offer situation. What's your best offer? So you put in your best offer, and then the seller can accept whichever offer they want. They can even pick an offer and counter that offer as well if it's not quite what they're looking for. But that's what you usually expect in a seller's market. A buyer's market, it favors the buyers more. Prices aren't going up as fast. There's usually not multiple offers. You usually have a little more time to decide on what kind of offer you want to make or which house you want to make the offer on too. But there is a caveat to that. There's been times where I've shown houses and they've never had an offer, they don't have any offers, they haven't had any activity or much activity, and then you make an offer, you put your offer in, and all of a sudden another offer or two has come in, and you're like, what? That happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. So even in a buyer's market, it's good to know their terms, the seller's terms, because then maybe we can negotiate a little bit more on price, or maybe if you're asking for closing costs too. And if you meet their terms, it might be more favorable. You might get a better price as well. So even in a buyer's market, you have to decide, do I really want this house? Am I willing to lose it if I do offer a low offer? Because remember, sellers are emotional. And if you go too low, they may get offended. They may not want to play ball, and they may not want to counter, and you could lose the house that way. So you have to decide ahead of time, how important is the house to you? If you lost the house and you didn't get the offer, would you be super disappointed and want to quit and give up? Okay, next we're going to talk about earnest money. Now, when you make an offer, you'll pledge a certain amount that goes towards the earnest money. Usually, it's 1% of the purchase price. You don't pay that when you make the offer. You wait until the offer is accepted. So earnest money can also be called a binder. It's opening escrow once the contract's accepted. It could be called a deposit. It just tells the seller that you have a little bit of skin in the game and that you're serious about making an offer. What is a fully executed contract? Okay, a fully executed contract is where all the terms, everything is agreed upon, the buyer and the seller have signed off on it. That is fully executed. Verbally agreeing is not fully executed. So let's say the seller and the buyer fully agree on the contract terms, price, and everything. And then while you're getting your signatures, another offer comes in that's better than yours. The seller wants to take it, they can take it. And that is heartbreaking because you thought it was a done deal. That's why we need to get on top of things, make sure that you get the contract, you sign it, and I get it over to the listing agent, their seller signs it, then it's a fully executed contract, and that's day 0 on our countdown. Now that's when you turn in your earnest money, and that most title companies require it to be done by a wire transfer. The wire transfer, simple process, you do it through your bank, they send it to them. Here's a caveat to that. You always want to make sure that you confirm the wire instruction came from the title company. Hackers, they will hack into title company, closing attorneys, buyers, sellers, listing agents, buyers agents, their emails. They'll hack into it and try to trick them into sending false wire instructions to the buyer. So you need to know who the title company is, who's closing it. You want their actual contact information because these hackers are smart. They'll send an email and it looks like it's coming from the title company. Maybe the email has one character that's different than the real one. Or they'll send you one saying, here's the phone number, and that phone number is not the same. They're not going to have the different phone numbers from the real title companies. They're not going to do that. Some title companies have their own process as far as like encryption and things like that too. So always verify that. So let's say we're coming down close to the closing, we're a couple weeks out from the closing, and you get this email that says, oh, here's the wiring instructions. Do not do it. Don't click nothing. Don't send nothing. Don't call them. Compare the two numbers. Reach out to me. Reach out to the title company. Because if you send that and it is a hacker and it goes to them, the window to reverse that is very, very small. And if you don't know and you send it and it's another day or even hours later, it's too late. You've lost that money. And this has happened. Even in our area, people have wired the money, and I'm talking about 100, 200,000s of dollars. They send it, they don't think anything of it, they don't confirm it, and it was a hacker that lost that money. And sometimes that's their life savings. So I don't want that to happen to you at all. Okay, in the contract, there's built-in contingencies to help protect you in certain events. So home inspection, the 10-day inspection period, as we talked about, day 0 is when you fully execute the contract, and then you count off the 10 days. During that 10-day period, you want to get it to home inspection. You want to get a WDO inspection. If it has a pool, you can get a pool inspection. If it has well and septic, you can get inspections for those as well. That's the time when you want to get that stuff done. Because if they come back and there's things wrong that you just do not want to mess with, the seller's not willing to fix anything, you want that opportunity to back out and be able to get your earnest money back. That's also when you do your homeowner's insurance check too. Or if there's anything important to you that would be a deal breaker, that's when you get it done, is during that 10-day inspection period. Okay, let's say we get past that. Now it's going to be time for the appraisal. There is an appraisal contingency. If the house does not appraise for what the purchase price is, there's a couple ways of handling it. Hopefully, the seller is willing to come down on their price. Now, usually in a buyer's market or a balanced market, they usually do. Or if they won't and they refuse to, you can bring extra money to closing to cover that gap between the purchase price and what it appraised for. Or you can back out. If you back out, you can receive your earnest money back. in full. Now, the other contingency would be financing contingency. So the financing contingency period is also negotiable too. It usually ends a few days or so before the actual closing. But let's say something comes back that they missed, and hopefully at this point, we've gotten you pre-approved. It should not happen. So you got to make sure that you follow their advice. Don't change jobs. Don't quit jobs. Don't get any new lines of credit. Don't get unusual deposits coming into your account that you can't explain, or don't have big giant amounts of money going out that you can't explain. You want to keep the status quo the same, because story time. Friends of mine had their house up for sale in another state. It was a short sale situation. They got a contract, moving towards closing. Everything's going pretty good. And then the buyers decide they wanted to buy new furniture for their house on credit. Okay, so they did that. They bought that new furniture on credit. That they were already really close to the debt to income ratio being out of whack. That put them out of whack. That means they lost that house. They could not get financing because they bought that furniture on credit right before closing. So how that is just that makes me sick, because here they have new furniture, but they don't have a house because they bought that new furniture first. So don't, the lender's going to tell you, don't buy anything, don't buy a brand new car, don't do anything like that until you've closed and it's after closing. Okay. One last contingency, I should say, that may crop up is you're relocating to this area and you are selling your house where you came from. You can make it contingent on the sale of your home. If that's the situation where you have to sell that house in order to buy the new house, you make it contingent on the sale of your home. Sellers do take that. They get a little nervous. They like to have a lot of communication with your listing agent on your house, with me with the listing agent here. Lots of communication. The more communication, the more they feel about it. But let's say the house doesn't sell and the contingency period's over. You can do a couple things with that. You can proceed if somehow you can close on this new house without having to sell your old one, or you can back out of this house, your new house, get your earnest money back. Or we can get it extended, so the contingency period is extended a little bit more. It just really depends on the situation with the seller too. Okay, so here's a way that you can end up losing your earnest money. Let's say it's a few days before closing, or we're out of all of our contingency periods and it's time to proceed with the closing. You get cold feet, change your mind, whatever it is, your scenario, something happens that can't fall into that financing contingency, and you back out of the contract. You can get out of the contract, but more than likely you will lose your earnest money. Sometimes things can't be helped. But that's why it's important to make sure that this is the house that you want before you make the offer, if possible, that everything is good. Like if something comes back from the inspections and you thought, well, maybe I can just deal with it, make sure that you are certain that you can deal with those things that pop up if the seller doesn't pay for them. Make sure during that time, there's no doubts, so that you can proceed so you don't lose your earnest money. This time can be fun, it can be stressful, but if we map everything out, we have you all situated ahead of time, we can make the process so much easier and more likely to get you to close and get those keys in your hand.